After holidays, after celebrations, a lot of us catch ourselves thinking, why did I eat all that food? Then panic kicks in. I definitely gained weight, or I need to restrict starting tomorrow. And just like that, we are back into a spiral of shame and guilt and strict rules and binge triggers. But what actually happens in the body and mind when you overeat? Sometimes it's just a slight physical discomfort, but sometimes it can trigger a huge storm of negative emotions. And most importantly, what can you do about it? In this video, we'll talk about what physiologically happens when you gain weight in a day or two. Why overeating does not equal gaining fat, and how your relationships with food, with your body, yourself, your emotions plays into it all. And most importantly, how to respond without panic, without self-punishment and extreme quick fixes, such as fasting or over-exercising. Just science, compassion and practical tools. My name is Olga Onoshenko. I am a certified psychotherapist, nutritionist and personal trainer. And this is a YouTube channel that marries physiology and psychology of losing weight. So let's go. What happened physiologically over 2 days of eating Easter eggs, hot cross buns with melted butter, and maybe overeating in general? You may stand up on scale and see plus 1, 2, maybe 3 kilograms, which is equivalent to 2, 4, 6 pounds. But do not panic, because this is not all fat. You cannot gain 4 pounds of fat in 2 days. It is physiologically impossible. We don't only gain fat, we also gain glycogen and we gain water, where glycogen is stored. So if you've eaten a lot of chocolate over Easter, carbs, sugars that were not used for energy went into glycogen stores in muscles and liver and will be used later for energy. Of course, if there was too much, some of it laid as fat, but most of it laid as glycogen in muscles. Glycogen is a temporary energy store, and our bodies can store up to 800 grams of glycogen, and every 1 gram of glycogen is bound to 3 grams of water. So if you had a lot of chocolate over Easter, you may have gained 500 grams of glycogen. And it's okay to store glycogen in your muscles and liver. And with these 500 grams, you're also storing 1.5 kilograms of water. In pounds, it will be 1 pound of glycogen and 3 pounds of water. And just like that, you gained 2 kilograms or 4 pounds of glycogen and water. In order to gain 1 kilogram of fat, you need to eat 7,700 calories more than you normally eat. Let's take me as an example. I normally eat 2,000 calories, and I normally spend 2,000 calories, and this allows me to maintain weight. If I decide to binge on Easter eggs and I add 4,000 calories, 2,000 calories more for 2 days, these extra 4,000 calories theoretically may convert into a pound of fat, but you need to understand that we're not robots and it never works like exact numbers. And one of the reasons is that if we overeat, our thermogenesis increases. Our body heats up, we burn more energy, some of us react to overfeeding with more fidgeting, more movement. And as a result, we will have not 4,000 extra calories, but 3,000 extra calories. And that's already much lower weight gain than we could expect. So please do not panic if you see much bigger number on scales than a couple of days ago. Nothing catastrophic happened. And even if you gain some fat, it's just only a little bit of fat. Moreover, there is such thing as natural compensation. If we've been eating more for a couple of days, we will be less hungry for the next couple of days. Our ghrelin, the hormone of hunger, will go down and will naturally eat less during the next couple of days. Of course, if it worked perfectly well, we would never gain weight, but bear this in mind as well. Now, let's talk about psychological part of it. What happens psychologically? Because some people eat a lot of food, a lot of tasty food, get full, maybe unbutton and maybe unzip their trousers, and feel happy and satiated and satisfied, and they enjoyed time with their family and friends. And some people ate more than they enjoyed. They overeat to huge discomfort, and as a result they feel a lot of guilt, shame and unnecessary self-criticism. And not just self-criticism, but self-attack, cruel self-attack. And it's normal to overeat in a hedonic way, when you sit down at the table and there is a lot of food and all the food is tasty and you do not feel anxiety about this food, and yes, you eat more, but you don't panic about it, and it's part of your social interaction. You bind around food, you share great experiences, you connect with people over food, and this is where this overeating is almost healthy. But if when you sit down at the table and all you think is, oh my gosh, I shouldn't eat that, I shouldn't eat this, summer is coming, I'm fat enough, and then you eat and then you feel guilt and then you suppress this guilt with more food, this is when it becomes unhealthy. And such unhealthy overeating does normally happen once in a while. Only for Easter, only for Christmas. Normally it happens systematically. Normally people have inclination towards emotional eating. Also normally these people are under high cognitive restraint. They are always on diet, perpetually on diet, and very often they are in the cycle of dieting and binging, restricting and binging, and food is always prohibited, and there is always bad and good food, and eating bad food makes them bad, and there is constant pressure and anxiety around food. And of course, celebrations, Easter, Christmas, all-inclusive holidays cause huge amount of stress to these people. And what normally happens? We add an extra chocolate egg, we start self-criticizing, self-attacking, we feel shame, guilt and anxiety that we gained weight, and it seems like we gained not 1 kilogram but 10 kilograms, or not a pound but 10 pounds. So our body image deteriorates immediately, and we want to soothe ourselves because feeling fat, feeling guilty, feeling ashamed triggers threat response. And threat response is not fun state to be in, and we want to change it. And normally this is food that helps us self-soothe and calm down. And also plans about future restrictions, dieting and losing weight also may soothe us. This is how this cycle of binging and restricting occurs. This is constant need of self-soothing, either with food or with planning dieting and restricting. Why holidays and celebrations are so triggering? Of course, there is a lot of food, and normally if you restrict food, if you're always on diet, a lot of food is a challenging moment in life. But there is also one thing that is important, is you are among people, and some of us may feel amazing around people and very calm and safe and sort of co-regulated, and their eating actually improves, but some of us feel unsafe around other people and tense and stressed, and they lose connection with their bodies and themselves, and this is what may exacerbate overeating. Because we overeat, we're not connected to our bodies, to our satiety, and when we are not completely safe and relaxed. By safe, I mean emotional safety most of the time. So we may just not notice our needs. For example, 5 years ago I celebrated New Year and there were a lot of people and I was tired, but I didn't recognize I was tired, and I actually had to go and sleep at some point, but I thought I have to stay and celebrate with everyone. And because I didn't notice my need in rest and my need in sleep, I would binge on cake, because this is what happens to emotional eaters. They try to satisfy their needs with food. Even if they do not need food. They may need rest, they may need soothing, they may need sleep, they may need anything, and they try to satisfy all these needs with food. And this is often what we work in therapy with. So what to do? If this is a one-off event, do not worry, I think you know how to deal with it. Most probably these couple of kilograms will go away in a couple of weeks. If they don't go away, you may need to intervene, but if your relationships with food, with your body, with yourself are healthy, then there will be no problem to restrict a little bit to find where I can create calorie deficit and lose this weight. But if your relationships with food, body and yourself are problematic, if such instances of overeating are systematic, then here is the plan. First of all, understand that self-attack, self-blame is counterproductive. Instead of thinking how I can punish myself, how I can restrict, and how I can decrease the damage, better think about what happened, what actually happened, why did I do it? Be curious, because there is something that triggers it, and there is some problem in self-regulation that makes you eat when you're not hungry, that makes you use food to self-soothe. What's that? What state I was in? What emotions did I feel? What did I actually need instead of food? And why is that I'm always on a diet, that I'm constantly restricting? And then eventually, very often in therapy, we come to a question: how do I treat myself? Am I extremely self-critical, or am I self-supporting? What do I base my self-worth on? Is my self-worth conditional? Am I attentive to my needs? Am I attentive to my body? Do I appreciate my body? So many questions need to be answered if overeating happens systematically, if you lose control over food regularly. And if this still happened, and then after you ask such questions, think about how you can come back to a balanced, calm state of mind. This can be light physical activity, not physical activity to burn off the overeaten calories, not to self-punish, but physical activity to make you feel better, to calm down nervous system. Maybe you need a little bit of rest, maybe you need a little bit of sleep, maybe you need to unload your schedule today to help your nervous system soothe. How can you take care of yourself? How you can come back to good state of mind, a physical and emotional state. Hydrate, and then wait until you're hungry again, and once you're hungry, then eat a healthy, balanced, satisfying, tasty meal. You can also use co-regulation as a tool to soothe your nervous system. Co-regulation means getting into contact with someone you trust, someone you feel comfortable with, and maybe you need a hug, maybe you need a supportive dialogue, maybe you just need to feel cared for. This is also an amazing tool to calm your nervous system down and stop the craving for more food, triggered by a storm of negative emotions and worsened body image because of overeating. maybe even this is a better moment to start analyzing what happened. Analyzing with curiosity, not with judgment. What's better not to do in this case? If you already have problematic relationships with food and body and you are in this cycle of restriction and overeating, it's better not to compensate with fasting, with restriction and with excessive exercise, because it only disconnects you further from your body and it doesn't help you build that connection with body's cues of hunger and satiety, and learn to eat in a more balanced way, according to your body's needs. It only strengthens that vicious cycle of dieting, overeating, feeling guilty, dieting, overeating, feeling guilty, and so on. If you have healthy relationships with food and body and you only overeat once in a while, why not compensate? Especially that next day you're less hungry, so why not skip a couple of meals? Why not schedule an additional workout this week? This all may help, because how do general population gain weight? It goes in a ladder, in steps. We gain weight over Christmas, like a pound or so, then we gained weight over Easter, half pound or so, and then year by year, pound by pound, we gain 10 pounds, unnecessary 10 pounds. So if you gain weight, it's better to intervene and lose it. But again, it's easy to say, to recommend, if you have full control over food, if you have good relationships with yourself, food, body, then it's sort of easy. But if you are inclined to have unhealthy eating behaviors, then it's better just to come back to your normal, regular, balanced eating and not compensate, and first learn to trust your body, to self-regulate, to tolerate distress. And this is what we do in therapy sessions. We learn self-regulation skills, we learn frustration tolerance skills, we build better relationships with yourself, we work with your internal critic, if this critic is toxic, because internal criticism can actually be a driver of progress, right? It helps us improve. But when such critic is also toxic and punishing and demanding without any support, this is what actually paralyzes us, and it doesn't help us develop at all. So to sum up this video, if scales show 2-3 kilograms more, it doesn't mean you gained fat. That's mostly water and glycogen. And second, if overeating is systematic and if there is a lot of anxiety around food and regular lack of self-control around food, then you need to stop ignoring it and stop blaming willpower, and rather look at the real psychological reasons for overeating. Therefore, I'd like to invite you to join me in therapy sessions. Please take a look below at useful links. There is a link to my Instagram where I show how I eat and train from a position of self-care, and also an inquiry form if you are interested in working with me as a nutritionist and as a psychotherapist. And don't forget to subscribe, like and share with anyone who would benefit from this video. Hope it was helpful. See you soon.